So Joe Biden wants to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. See right over here? Reported from NPR. Of course, this is no big secret. It's not like NPR let some big cat out of the bag. A lot of people have understood that Joe Biden has kind of talked about it. Some people wondered whether he would do it or not, but he said he would. A lot of people thought it was coming. $15 an hour minimum wage. Okay? Now, obviously, there's a lot of people in the country who also believe that our minimum wage should be raised, and the number predominantly is the $15 an hour. I believe that is a figure that comes from the Bernie Sanders talking point. I don't know that all the people who believe $15 an hour should be the minimum wage have sat down and done a lot of in-depth thinking on the issue. I think they've listened to probably a lot of Bernie Sanders campaign events. They've listened to a lot of Bernie Sanders videos, and possibly even the people who jumped on the bandwagon after Bernie Sanders. I think they've listened to a lot of that, and they've taken away from it that, well, they made a good argument, so $15 an hour should be the minimum wage, and that's what people need to make to live. Now, I've seen a lot of people also who are arguing everybody deserves, no matter what their job is, to have a livable income, is the way they're putting it, right? A livable income. Now, I'm seeing that on a lot of my personal social media. Obviously, I've seen it on Twitter as well, okay? But I'm seeing a lot of it come from the personal social media. Now, that is not a representation, really, of what my Twitter is. My personal Facebook has a lot of people who are just local to the South Carolina area. So we're going to, again, jump into how that would affect state by state. But first of all, I'm not entirely convinced that you're necessarily doing all that well in New York or California just by making $15 an hour. Now, if you can, you can. If someone's got evidence to show that that's a good wage in those states, by all means, please show me the evidence in the comment section. Change my mind here. I haven't looked in depth at what those states need really wage-wise to make quote-unquote a livable wage. But 15 an hour is what all the liberals and the progressives are seemingly pushing for here. So we're going to say that in your argument that it should be. What I've gathered is that the price of living, the cost of living is very high in those places, so I'm not sure. We're going to get back to the cost of living aspect in a minute. So again, very, very popular thing here, right? Everybody thinks this $15 an hour minimum wage is absolutely wonderful. So I put out a poll on Twitter. Now, full disclosure, did not get a lot of interaction like I was hoping for. I've had some polls in the past that got a decent bit of interaction. This one, it performed pretty poorly, but nonetheless, I think for the amount of people who still voted, this speaks volumes. As you can see right here, even though it only got 13 votes, okay, when I put out, would you rather have a $15 an hour minimum wage or a $1,200 monthly UBI? Now, some people are like, $1,200? If you're talking about Andrew Yang's plan, he said $2,000. Get back to that in a minute. 100% of the vote went toward the UBI. I was nervous making this that a lot of people were going to vote for the $15 an hour minimum wage. Okay? And I even got some responses. Well, I got split responses. One guy commented and said, why can't we have both? Get to that. Other people, some of my more right-wing or libertarian friends here, Dave and Reed Coverdale here, okay, they commented on it and basically said, what if we want neither one? Get back to that as well. Let's start from the top here, okay? As I was kind of hinting at throughout the comments on this, realistically, I think one is a good thing, and I'm not convinced that the other one is. So let's just go ahead and get the cat out of the bag. Do I think that we should raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour? No. Now, before you cut the video off, do I think people should have to make constant starvation wages, per se? So I'm not necessarily going to say it's a starvation like wage. I don't believe people deserve, when they're busting their ass working, to starve. Okay? Now, a big part of the problem, obviously, if you're in high school and you're a teenager, you're not really making a career out of McDonald's. or Burger King. Unfortunately, with the way our job market is, there's a massive problem in our education system where people are not being trained to do a lot of these trade jobs that are in the market today. They haven't received proper training, proper certification. Our education system is completely bass-ackwards. It's pushing people towards pursuing a liberal arts degree to get them thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in debt. So now they want student debt to be relieved because the failed education system pushed them down that road. And not only do they need the student debt to be forgiven, but because they pursued something that did not give them a job necessarily when they finished, now they're stuck in this field, unable to find a job making good money, and they're fucked. That's why you have a lot of this. So it's not necessarily all these people's fault. People, when they're young, their minds can be molded very easily, and our education system has done a disservice to many people by telling them, go get this master's degree in theology or what the fuck ever, and then they can't go out in the world and find a job that correlates to it, yet they ran up buku amount of fucking debt to go get it. And then they get out in the world, and they're fucked to no end. Burger King was not meant to be a job to be successful in this life. But unfortunately, more and more people are finding that with no skill, no prior training, this and that, and the only thing they've got is some master's degree or bachelor's degree or associate's degree or whatever in a field that does not do shit for the most part in the manufacturing workforce, construction, welding, machine tool, automotive repair. They're not finding these jobs, and they're not left with much else to choose from. And I say Burger King, McDonald's, to me that's kind of low-hanging fruit. Hell, even retail jobs, you're still really not competing with the greatest of the job market, with the best benefits, with the best wages. And so more and more people have found themselves stuck in this system. Not only that, but more and more of those jobs are starting to be phased out thanks to automation. Automation, Andrew Yang, as he brought up many times, automation has really crippled the workforce. Now, why do I say, going back to the original point here, why do I say raising the minimum wage isn't probably a good idea? Well, there's a lot of things here, but we'll just start from the top. First of all, I said this multiple times on my show. I said it multiple times on other people's show. Go across the country and you come back and tell me that you could take $20 and it would go just as far in my state of South Carolina as it would in California, New York, Florida. It might go just as far in Alabama. It might go just as far in North Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, Virginia, Georgia, Mississippi, Louisiana, depending on the area. Go to New Orleans. Nope, you ain't gonna go as far there. Okay? Depends on where you're at as far as to how far your money can go. The reason why, the cost of living differs state to state. Where some states absolutely probably need to make a bare minimum of $15 an hour, I don't know that you need to quote unquote make a bare minimum to be able to squeeze by in my state. It might make you a little more comfortable, but that's problem number one. Problem number one is going to say, well, even if they don't need it, then what's the hell the matter? You're just helping everybody out, right? Okay, so that's going to be the argument for point number one. Now let's get to point number two on why it's not a good idea. So point number two, you're going to put the burden on your employer to find a way to pay you more money. You know, it's kind of like the old Marie Antoinette when the fucking people during the French Revolution were starving in the streets. And she told the people to feed them cake because they were eating cake at the palace, right? A lot of people, I don't know if they're not thinking it through or if they thought it through and just somehow think that it's going to fucking work and don't give a shit. But just because the government raises the wage to $15 an hour does not mean that all of a sudden your business has that much more money to just toss at you. Multinational large corporations, sure. But a small business, a franchise, some mom and pop shop, they might not have that much money budgeted to pay you. So where are they going to come up with the money to pay you? It's not like the government passed this minimum wage and then said to any employer, if you can't afford to pay your workers this, come qualify for the government subsidy so we can bail you out. No, they're not doing that. These people have to come up with the money from somewhere to pay you that extra wage. You know how they usually come up with that money? Number one, raising the prices of anything that they're selling or making or producing or whatever the job consists of them doing. The cost goes up. In other cases, layoffs go up. If they have a massive staff and they have to come up with this money and they don't want to raise the price to put the burden on the consumer, then they start making the people doing the job work harder and they cut back on the amount of people there. So cutbacks. In other words, you're going to get a rise in unemployment. Lastly, they automate even quicker. Now, automation, it's not like if we don't raise the minimum wage, automation won't happen. Automation will happen. It's already been happening. It's already been happening and the minimum wage hasn't been raised in how long? But the point is, the quicker you start to pry into their pocketbook, the quicker they're going to have to try to shell out even more cash to automate even quicker to get rid of more people. The more people they can get rid of with a machine, that saves them money in many cases. And it's just going to keep happening. And the more you try to cut into their wealth, the quicker it's going to happen. Now, you've got some businesses who are going to take little elements of each of those things. And then you've got the real greedy ones who will just do all fucking three of them. They will up the price of whatever it is they're making or selling. They will lay off. And they will try to automate even quicker if they can. They will do all three of those things. The greed of man is very powerful. This idea that you're just going to raise the minimum wage and every damn thing is going to be hunky fucking dory. No, you need to stop and think about that. Now, again, I am not making the case that people should just be content with starving in the street when they bust their ass 40 hours a week. I'm not making the argument that if you're working your ass off, you should be absolutely stuck living in poverty with these dirt poor wages. No. And that's why I made that poll. Which would you rather have, the $15 an hour minimum wage or a UBI? Now let's talk UBI. So my libertarian friend Reed and Dave didn't seem to like the idea. Okay? Now Reed has a good point. We'll address a little later on in the video here. But Andrew Yang proposed how he would pay for the UBI. Well, the first thing that I started seeing about this whole UBI thing is, well, they're just going to have to print money. Print money. Is nobody worried about inflation? First of all, no one's talking about printing any money. Okay? If it's put in place properly, we're not just going to print out money to pay for a UBI. Andrew Yang's plan was to use the value-added tax, okay? And the focal point that he wanted to hit as far as to where to come up with the revenue were big tech companies, people who are dodging taxes and whatnot already, storing the money in offshore accounts and so on and so forth. People who are also selling your information and making buku amount of money off of it, okay? They're raking in the dough by selling your information so that the next time you go on Facebook, the thing you just Googled for to see how much it cost, now you see an advertisement for it the next time you get on Facebook, for example, right? So they're making a lot of money off this stuff, okay? So his idea was put a tax on this sort of thing and use that money to give a basic income to every American. Now, his proposal was $2,000 a month, okay? The reason that I went with $1,200 a month is I want you to do some math real quick, okay? Now, I did $7.50 an hour times 40, okay? And then I did that, what that came out to times 4, okay? I don't remember the exact figures on that, but check me on this, okay? What I do remember is that by the time you figured out the difference in what you would have made for a month off of $7.50 an hour against what you would have made in a month off of $15 an hour, roughly the difference was about $1,240. So you figure again, you're only bringing home about $1,240 as opposed to the $1,200 UBI. But again, before taxes come out of it, By the time you take the taxes out, you're probably only going to bring home, depending on where you live, the states can make a difference here, somewhere between probably $800, $900, $1,000 even, by the time a month's worth of taxes have come out of that. So realistically, a $1,200 UBI is already giving you more than you were going to get out of that minimum wage increase anyway after taxes came out. Because without any taxes, you only had $40 more. You're going to lose a lot more than $40 in taxes over the course of a month. Okay? So this is actually doing a lot better. Furthermore than that, it does not put the strain upon the job to find that income for you. It is through taxes imposed upon the big tech companies who have way too much power in this country right now. They're trying to shut out competition. They're lobbying politicians. They're raking in the dough, and they're doing it based off selling your information around. We've already heard these scandals multiple times, so I like the idea. Now, you might say, what if it causes layoffs in Silicon Valley? Well, if it does, I don't want to see anyone lose their job, but I'm also much rather see a big tech company have to pay out the money and figure out how to deal with it than I had Main Street. Because that's where the burden's going to go. Also, again, what about the people who already make above $15 an hour? Like myself, like other people. You know, now I don't make a huge amount of money. I don't make over 20, I'll put it that way. But I make above 15. Well, I'm not going to get a raise more than likely based off of this. This is only going to mandate that anyone who didn't make $15 an hour before get $15 an hour now. And I can guarantee you some of the people who are making less than $15 an hour aren't doing half the amount of stressful work that I am. I have to bust my ass regularly. First, second, third shifts all over the damn place, okay? Now, there might have been some people who were making less money than me who had to do the same thing. Maybe so. But there's also some people who are not. I can tell you right now, you know, some of these people, when I do go get fast food, and I see how they act toward a customer. You know, used to be you could go get some fast food and there'd be someone who would be pleasant and polite when you got to the window to take your order. And at the end of it all, they'd always tell you, like, have a great day or something like that. And you might say it's because they're making poor wages that they have a foul attitude, but I got news for you.
You're not taking action.
That's still, you should not let your personal problems be that negative toward other people who are not your problem. You're taking it out on the wrong people. And the more you take it out on the wrong people, the more you develop a stigma towards them that you don't need to make that kind of money. If you're talking about making the kind of money that approaches my territory, and yet I'm out here with trying, even if I am mentally struggling, even if I am physically hurting, trying to keep a positive attitude to keep my job, and then I come to your facility and you damn near throw a to-go bag at me and don't tell me, have a good day, kiss your ass, nothing, when you shut the fucking window in my face, that doesn't sit very well with me. And for a lot of people, you call them a Karen or whatever, but for a lot of people out there, they're like, this motherfucker don't deserve to make $15 an hour. I know people making $15 an hour who are busting their ass, and this lazy sack of shit that doesn't even have the common courtesy to give good fucking manners doesn't deserve that kind of money. So that's another problem, where a lot of people who are already making above 15's like, this motherfucker shouldn't be getting this close to what I make. Look how pitiful their job performance seems to be. It doesn't matter why the performance is that bad. It's a stigma that is put into someone's mind, that they just don't feel you're doing the same kind of work because you have such a poor fucking attitude. That's a real thing. But again, the good thing about the UBI is it's not putting the strain on the employer, and it's giving everyone a raise. But that's the key. Everyone gets a raise. So if the person who had that piss poor attitude got the raise, guess what? He's not encroaching upon my wages where I've been making, because under the UBI, I get a raise too. Everybody gets a basic income. That means everybody's income goes up across the board, not just the people who are making below $15 an hour. And they're going to get more money. Now, again, if you want to debate whether it should be the $2,000 versus $1,200, sure. I'm saying the $1,200 just simply because if you did the math between the $7.25 to $15 an hour, again, that came out to $1,240. But before taxes. After taxes, you're going to get less than $1,200. So I just went with the $1,200. Okay? I also go with a figure like that simply because $2,000 might be what we need, depending on the argument. If we're going to say that because we're not going to get Medicare for all, we should be buying private health care, and that would then cover you to be able to afford a private health care plan or whatever. Okay, maybe so. So depending on the argument, I could possibly see the reasoning for going to $2,000 a month. On the flip side, this is a more right-wing talking point. I know a lot of people aren't going to like it, but just hear me out. You don't want to make it so someone doesn't have to go to work at all. Because unfortunately, just like I described, a lot of those people that you see, unfortunately, sometimes in retail or fast food or whatever, have these poor attitudes. They don't want to be at work in a lot of cases, period. And I'm not just making an assumption. I once upon a time worked in these fields. I've interacted with a lot of these people. I know how some of them are. Is it a vast majority? Some people might believe it. I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no. I'm not going to say it's a majority of the people who are in the workforce. But at the same time, if you could just sit home, draw a universal basic income, and squeeze by and spend your time at home all the time, why go to work? Why go to work? Seriously. Why would you want to? Some people want to do something with their time and stay productive besides be a couch potato. Other people would much rather sit home, play fucking video games, and just draw money. There are many people already over the years who have gamed the welfare system. So they're going to try to game this too. So it really needs to be enough of a universal basic income so it can add on to what you make as a worker and make sure that you have a livable income. But it should not be enough to just subsidize you to sit at home on your ass and never have to go to work, in my opinion. Now, for people who are disabled, can't work, that's a whole other story. But for able-bodied people, they should be able to go to work or find something to make an income, even if they make a YouTube channel. You know what I mean? Whatever it is you want to do, if you can make a living by sitting at home that doesn't require the government to subsidize you, then that's wonderful. I'm happy for you. But it shouldn't just be you should be allowed to stay at home because you're being subsidized to do so, basically. This should be something that we give to people to help them make ends meet. Now, I know the more libertarian argument is, well, we shouldn't have to do that. We should be able to grow everyone's wages naturally. Ideally, yeah. But you're talking about some major reforms to the system that I don't think you're going to be able to snap your fingers and make. We've got a ton of crony capitalism. How we're going to put that toothpaste back in the tube is not going to be so easily done. Is it possible to be done? Sure. But it ain't going to be that quick. I don't think you're going to take the entire government back in one fell swoop anyway. And considering how long elections take to happen, you could be looking at very easily a 4, 8 to 10 or multi-decade even process, assuming our country can stay afloat that long. So in the meantime, what the fuck do you do? I think this is the right thing to do, especially if it can be implemented properly and paid for without causing further inflation. But even if it does cause a little bit of inflation, I will say this, just to be the devil's advocate. I'd rather have that causing some kind of inflation than us printing out fucking money to bail out Wall Street, than us printing out fucking money to promote more war, to please the DOD, to please the military-industrial complex. If we're going to cause inflation, we might as well do it to take care of our fucking needs at home, not to take care of all these goddamn lobbyists, special interests, and the fucking war machine. Okay? If we're going to do it, we better fucking be doing it for the right reasons is the way I look at it. And taking care of our country is the right reason in my view. So that's why I say that the UBI is actually a good plan. And according to the poll, even though it was 13 people, 100% of the people said they'd rather have the UBI than the minimum wage. And I'm glad. Again, I was nervous some people were going to vote minimum wage. And there might be some people who will watch this video and say the minimum wage is the better idea. And if you still don't buy into my argument at the end of this video, so be it. But I've made the case out, and if this goes through, I think time will show. You'll see exactly what I was talking about. You'll see exactly what I was talking about, okay? So now we're going to touch on one final topic here. And this was a good argument against the UBI by my good friend here, Reed, okay? As he pointed out, this government wouldn't institute it properly anyway. you can't, like, no, this government that we've got right now, you think they would handle it properly? So basically what a UBI would be like Social Security for everyone. Well, look what our government's already done to Social Security. They've destroyed it. They've bankrupted it. So understand this, a big reason why Social Security was so crippled goes all the way back to Lyndon Johnson. Now, I know a lot of us want to focus on the war hawk stuff with being Bush and Obama, Clinton, Biden, Trump, okay, Bush Sr. Some people even go back as far as Ronald Reagan. Some people go to Nixon. Well, Lyndon Baines Johnson was the first president to tap the Social Security Fund to gather money to send troops into Vietnam. He was the first person to hit Social Security to take money out of it. The government has made a reputation out of dipping into the pool of Social Security over the years and replacing it with IOUs. And the problem is because we've racked up so much debt, the money has never really been replaced. And right now, everyone like myself who pays taxes into Social Security are subsidizing the people who already paid their taxes and are drawing out of it. So the whole point was I pay taxes in so that when I retire, I draw that money back out. But right now, I'm paying the taxes in for someone else to draw out because their money was depleted long time ago. And it's on track for a massive failure because our elected leaders for decades have deliberately fucked it up. So what do you think they could do with the UBI thing? So again, if they institute it, if these shitty fucking politicians that we've elected institute it, understand why ideally, if it was done right, you wouldn't have the inflation because we wouldn't be printing money, but they're gonna have to do that. And you know why? Because they'll get into another fucking war. And rather than borrow the money, and rather than print money for the war, if somehow there's money sitting in the pool, then they'll be fucking tapping it until they can't tap anymore, in which case then to keep the program going, then they'll have to print money or borrow. And you're right back into a big cycle of bullshit. That's the problem with our current government even putting this in place. And if you need reassurances to understand that they don't have enough sense to not do that, understand. You heard all the points that I laid out about how this is better than the $15 an hour minimum wage, does more at the end of the day than the $15 an hour minimum wage for the people will do. It doesn't put burden on the employer. Understand, I just laid out for you how this is a better concept than raising your minimum wage, and yet what the fuck is this government pushing for? Raising the minimum wage. Not state by state. Not leaning in on the states and telling the states to do it so that the cost of living is reflected by what the minimum wage should be in those states, because each state's got a different cost of living. $15 an hour does different things here versus there. You're still not going to eliminate all that negative side effect with the jobs, the cutbacks, etc., etc. And the only way you could would require a lot of legislation with a lot of fine print, and God, we can't even get them to put simple shit down. How in the hell are you going to expect them to do that? But they just want the federal, the blanket, sweeping across the board, minimum wage. Bad idea. And that's what the fuck their game plan is. The only guy who had the sense to promote the UBI and promote a way to properly do it was Andrew Yang. Now, full credit to Tulsi. She signed on to his plan. She supported his plan. She said she would like to do it as well. And there might have even been some other people who I think might have mentioned the idea or whatever. Certainly wasn't Joe Biden. No, he wants the $15 an hour minimum wage. And what's the irony of that? Again, the Democrats run off of continuing to cause problems, blaming Republicans, and then somehow mentally mind-fucking a lot of the people that they're causing these problems for into thinking they're the solution to it. God, I mean, they've been doing this shit for decades. They say we're going to fix healthcare. When they get the chance, they put forward a shitty fucking healthcare proposal that's god-awful, that was bound to do nothing but cause problems. Sure, it helped some people, but for people like me, hell, I still couldn't afford healthcare. So they went out of their way to fuck over the system, and now here they are trying to, quote unquote, fix it again. By the way, Biden just backed off his whole plan for even the public option. A public option is a shitty plan, in my opinion, too. That's a different video. But hell, he's backed off of that now. No, now we need to subsidize fucking Cobra. A big fucking giveaway to the rich corporations. So understand, he's only hurting more people. He's only going to force more people out of work. He's going to try to force them to get on some kind of already out there government dole. And who the main people it's going to hurt are minorities. The people that are supposed to be their own base. That's who's going to suffer the worst through this minimum wage stuff. It's going to put more minorities out of work. He's going to keep them down the totem pole, further into poverty, and then get out there and try to Pied Piper all of them into voting for him again, saying, I'm going to fix your problems, then get reelected and fuck them over. That's like the Democrat playbook for the last 20 to 30 years. So understand, if you're wanting wages, in a way, I call it wages. I consider if you get a UBI, you got a raise in wages, basically, okay? If you want that to go up, raising the minimum wage ain't the way you need to really do it. The UBI is. But it needs to be put in place properly. For it to be put in place properly, you need to get Democrats and Republicans the fuck out of office. You need a whole new crop of leaders at Capitol Hill. You also need some different people in the White House. Trump wouldn't have necessarily handled it any better. So don't think this is just, I'm trying to play the game where Trump was better and Joe Biden. Nope, they both sucked. I've been very vocal. Okay, I didn't like either one of them. But flat out, one of these, if done right, would be a good idea. The other, I don't see the benefit from it at all. There might be some kind of a short-term benefit at first. Give it time, mark my words, that minimum wage is going to come back to bite you in the ass, as it has done for many years. Many years. I mean, we've always been raising the minimum wage. So why is the problem not stopped? Why do we still have the same problem where people can't make enough money to make ends meet? It's arguably even worse today. What's the argument? Because we didn't keep raising. So your argument is that we should constantly keep raising and raising and raising and raising and raising and raising. Follow the pattern. Every time the wages went up, the cost of living was soon to follow. Inflation's got something to do with it too. But look at the scale, look at the chart, look at the graphs. When the wages were forced to go up, the cost of living went up. And so if your argument is that we should just keep constantly raising, sooner or fucking later people will be making $50 an hour as a damn minimum wage. Your money will eventually become worth shit. Like, you're just going to devalue the fuck out of your dollar after so damn long. Every damn time the business has to be forced to come up with the money. Again, the greedy man, what do you think they're going to do? Only bring home $100 worth of profit? Number one, their business can't stay open. And number two, they're if they could afford to just take that much of a cut, a lot of them aren't going to want to, especially the big corporations. The mom and pop shop probably will wind up folding or something. But the big corporations, they're not going to take the cut in profits. So you need to think this whole thing through, seriously. So that's my whole argument about why the UBI is actually not a bad idea. In my opinion, it's actually a pretty good idea if it's done right. That's a very key element. I kind of feel the same way about the healthcare system. I think that if it's done right, having a government healthcare wouldn't be a bad idea. I'll be making another video later on this week talking about that. Okay? But again, it all comes down to the center point of having a government who would handle it properly. The problem is right now, we don't have one. Even if they had the common sense to run it right, they simply wouldn't. And that's a huge problem.